Hey everyone, so it's already March, and that means that we should be seeing 3.13 go to the PTU in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully see it go live by the end of the month. So that'll be the first big update of the year, but one other thing that we haven't seen this year is any new concept ships, so I want to take some time today to speculate on what ships might be revealed to us this year. Before we start though, if you enjoy this video or you just want to support the channel, please consider subscribing and liking the video. I really appreciate it. So I know a lot of people aren't a fan of CIG continuing to create new ships when they already have so many that they have to finish in their backlog, and I definitely understand this frustration. I own both a Banu Merchantman and an Endeavor, so I'm definitely familiar with waiting. So there definitely are times when it seems like CIG's priorities aren't aligned with fulfilling ships to veteran backers, but there also are times when the wait seems somewhat justified because of core technology that needs to be implemented into the game. For example, the Hull C seems to be in a pretty near to finished state, but it's waiting on some changes to be made to how physics grids work and ship-to-station docking, so it wouldn't really make sense to put it in the game before those are finished. So yeah, some of the ships that we're still waiting on, like the Redeemer, seem like they could have been finished a while ago, but weren't for some reason, but for a lot of the other ones, there are legitimate reasons why the game isn't ready for them yet. Whatever your take on the situation is though, I do think that the game still needs more ships. One of my favorite things about Star Citizen is the wide variety of ships that are available, and all of them are pretty unique and have a strong personality to them, especially compared to some other sci-fi games or media. We already do have a lot of ships, but I think just based on certain gameplay loops and also for some lore-based reasons, there's room for some more. So in this video, I just want to speculate on what sort of concepts or new ships we might see this year. This is all just my thoughts on this. I don't have any actual information to base these predictions on besides just some guessing, but I really am looking forward to seeing what's coming this year. And as always, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say in the comments. You all always have some great ideas and input, so be sure to leave your thoughts down below. So the first type of ship that I think we might see announced this year is some sort of refinery ship. Now this isn't even that much of a guess because at CitizenCon 2019, or 2949 if you want to go with the inverse nomenclature, they went through some of the ideas for the ships that they wanted to add to the game. There were 4 of these in total, and we've actually gotten 2 of them in game at the moment. So we had the small mining vehicle for the first one, and this obviously became the now prolific Greycat Rock, and the other one we have in game is the escort fighter for the Prowler, which we just recently got in the form of the Asperia Talon. Now the other 2 concepts haven't been announced as full concepts yet, but one was a medium-sized Xeon cargo, which does seem interesting, but we aren't really lacking in cargo ships at the moment, and the other was a starter refinery ship. So this one was the most interesting to me, and I really hope that we see this announced this year at least, and it would be even cooler if they did something like they did with the Talon and we were able to get our hands on it sooner rather than later. I think it makes sense to start getting some refining capable ships into the game, because besides the capital class mining behemoth that is the Orion, no current ships have any sort of refining capabilities. However, it seems like the game is almost ready for this sort of ship. They've been talking recently about external inventories and all the changes that we'll be seeing to inventory management in the coming months, so I think it would be awesome if we could finally start using those saddlebags on the Prospector and Mole as intended. So if you don't know, these saddlebags on each side of the Prospector and also on the underside of the Mole are eventually going to be able to come off, and they can be exchanged for empty ones. This way you can keep mining as a miner and either have a cargo ship come and pick up the ore that you've mined, or what I think would be even better is to have a refinery ship come and pick it up. Then it could refine your ore on its way to wherever is best to sell it off, and you don't even have to take a visit to a refinery deck. So this does seem on the surface like it would be pretty far off in terms of technology that's currently in the game, but if you think about it, we already have access to an external inventory in the Rock, and it seems like they've been working on inventory stuff even more, so being able to move things from ship to ship later in the year might not be too far off. Also, they already have all the values from the refinery decks that they could use on a smaller scale in this refinery ship. In my opinion, I think it's very likely that we'll see some sort of refinery ship at least announced this year. It really seems like CIG wants to complete the mining gameplay loop, and having a ship-based refinery would be part of this, and would really diversify the gameplay and allow for mining to be a much more group-based activity. Right now you do have multiple tasks to do as a miner because you have to mine the ore, then go and refine it, then eventually haul your refined ore somewhere to sell it, but right now there's not really any way to get other people involved in this process, since you're the only one who has access to your ship's inventories, so you have to be there at the refining terminal to start the refining job, then you have to go back to the refining terminal to load your cargo ship, and you're also the only one who can sell things from your ships at the sale terminal on whichever planet you choose to take your ore. But if they make it so that someone can give you ore that they've mined, which you then load into your refinery ship and then can go sell, this really opens up the potential for large group mining operations. So yeah, I think this would help mining be a little bit less of an individual gameplay loop and allow for those who prefer hauling over mining to participate in this somewhat lucrative gameplay loop. So I'm definitely excited for the possibility of the ship being implemented, but let me know what you think about this and how you'd like it to work. Continuing in a similar vein, I think another ship that we will definitely see at some point is a large-sized mining ship. Right now we have a small with the Misk Prospector, a medium ship with the Argo Mole, and a capital-sized mining ship with the RSI Orion, but there's a massive gap between the Mole and the Orion. The Mole is just under 40 meters long, and the Orion is listed at 170, so there's definitely room for another ship in between them. In terms of manufacture for this ship, I think it would be pretty cool to see it come from Consolidated Outland, since it seems up their alley with their industrial-focused Pioneer that they also make, and their overall lack of ships in-game. They only make the Pioneer, the Nomad, and the Mustangs, so they need a few more offerings in the verse I think, even though in the lore they are a newer manufacturer. So yeah, like I mentioned with the Refinery ship, I think CIG really wants to make mining into a complete gameplay loop, and having options available at all sizes will help with that. I do hope that we start to see a bit more variety in size of rock, because even though we did get some bigger rocks in 3.12 that the Prospector can't always mine, they're only about twice the mass of what we had before at most. Although I think the massive Orion is still a ways off before it can be used in the game, something in the large size category could be implemented and functional in the near future, I think. And again, having these bigger options would add more gameplay, especially if they make mining with larger ships different from the smaller ones, which I think would be nice. This could help switch up the mining gameplay, which can get stale at times. Also, it would be really cool if larger ships like this one could work together with a group of smaller mining ships like Prospectors to break up the big rocks, which could then be broken into smaller pieces and collected by the Prospectors. I'm not sure how it would work exactly, but right now mining in a Mole and mining in a Prospector are very similar, so I do hope that when they add in bigger mining ships, they make mining function similarly, but a bit more different than what we have now. So yeah, what do you guys think about a bigger mining ship, and how would you have the gameplay work for the larger scale miners? So my last two guesses were a bit more based in fact than this one's gonna be, but based on the lore, I still think it makes a bit of sense. So in the lore, Aegis and Anvil are the two main military shipbuilding corporations, but in recent years Aegis has been producing fewer ships for the military and Anvil has received most of the contracts. Now I'm not sure whether or not this is going to mean Anvil ships are going to be harder to get as a civilian, but it doesn't seem like that's the case because Anvil has a pretty large lineup of ships available to pledge for. However, they have a strange lack of any capital ships. As the premier military shipbuilder, this is a little odd, so I have no doubt that at some point we will see some sort of capital class ship from them. Whether or not it's available to pledge for is another question though. If we do see a capital from Anvil that can be player owned though, I think it'll be a corvette and probably around the size of the Polaris. Corvettes are one of my favorite sizes of ships along with medium-large size daily drivers because they're the most flexible of capital ships. While getting together the crew for an Idris or anything larger is going to be prohibitive and pretty much limited to org activities, something like a Polaris can be operated by under 10 people, which is a lot more reasonable for doing frequently, and it could even be done with a group of friends. Also, the cost to run a Corvette will still probably be high, but it's not going to be near as much as something like an Idris. So those are some of the many reasons that I like Corvettes, but why do I think Anvil would be making one? Well, I think that right now, even though we supposedly have a lot of variety for that class of ship, there's really only one well-rounded option, and even that is pretty specialized. So in the Corvette class, we have the Perseus and Hammerhead, which are both barely big enough to be considered part of the class, and even if they are, they're both pretty much made for one role. The Hammerhead is a patrol or escort ship designed for dealing with fighters, and it can also screen for torpedoes, and the Perseus is also a patrol and escort ship, but it's made for taking out large sub-capital ships. Beyond that, they both have a small cargo bay each, but not much in terms of other amenities to where they could be used for much beyond pure combat roles. The Nautilus is a bit bigger than both of these ships, but it's laser focused on mine gameplay. It's definitely going to be useful for controlling and defending important areas in the verse, and it also has a decent bit of firepower, but it again lacks much for doing non-combat tasks, at least from what we know about it at the moment. So the one somewhat flexible Corvette is the Polaris, which is also a bit larger than the other offerings at 155 meters, and its main role is also a patrol ship, but it uses size 10 torpedoes to fulfill this role instead of focusing on large turrets. However, its flexibility comes from its many features, including a hangar with repair capabilities, sizable cargo bay, med bay, large crew area, an armory, and a brig. So these features are what let the Polaris go on those longer patrol tours, but they could also be used by players who want to use the ship as somewhat of a mobile base. Now it might be somewhat of an expensive mobile base to run, but since it's not a frigate or larger, it should be manageable with some planning. This set of features and capabilities has made it really popular among players, and I agree with the sentiment that it's going to be a really useful ship and it'll probably give you a ton of gameplay opportunities. Because the Polaris is so popular though, I think it might make sense for CIG to give players another option with similar capabilities with a different overall approach. The Polaris is a pretty offensive focused ship, and even though it has crew amenities that'll let it fly around for a while, its main offense is torpedoes, which can run out. Also, it's not described as being flimsy, but it's also not described as a ship that can stay in a fight for a while. So while I don't expect any corvette to be able to hang around in a battle with a larger ship for a long period of time, it also doesn't seem like the Polaris is as heavily armored as possible for a corvette, just based on its role. So what I'd really like to see this Anvil ship be is maybe something like a bigger Perseus, but a bit more well-rounded. The Perseus has a lot of firepower for its size, but besides the 2 main turrets, it only has 2 smaller turrets, so it's a bit vulnerable to fighters, and again, it doesn't really have anything beyond those big guns in terms of features. If Anvil made a ship with a somewhat comparable feature set to the Polaris, but with a more defensive set of weaponry, armor, and shielding, I think it would be an instant hit and would fill the gap of a more flexible but less offensive corvette. I do like the Polaris, but I've always been a bit hesitant on its supposed reliance on hit and run tactics if I'm going to be using it as a mobile base, so it'd be nice to have an actual competitor. Let me know what you guys think on this one though. I bet a lot of you will think this has too much overlap, but I really love the Corvette class and I'd like to see more options available. So those are my guesses as to what sort of ships we might see added to the verse this year, and I'm really excited to find out if I'm right or wrong. Again, these are really only guesses, so feel free to disagree and let me know what ships you think might be revealed this year, or just what sort of ships you'd like to see added to the verse. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like or subscribe. Thanks for watching.